Firstly, I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. And we're going to discuss a very interesting subject, a subject that seems obvious to us all. And yet, when you start breaking it into parts, you realize actually that there's quite a lot to it. So, we're going to look at the age-old question, what is life really? What is life? Now, we live our lives surrounded by routines, achievements, relationships, and goals. We celebrate milestones and we mourn losses. We live the day mechanically, taking life for granted, as if it were our right. And we sleep at night, assured in our minds that there will be a tomorrow. For most of us, life simply occurs. And by and large, we remain indifferent to it. It's just there. So today, it's time to pause, and I mean truly pause, and ask ourselves, what is life? And life not just as a word or a condition, but as a mystery, a gift, an experience that touches us on so many levels, seen and unseen. Many people define life by outward success, survival, or struggle, but life is much more than what we do. It is an awareness, what we feel, how we think, and how we connect with ourselves and with others and with the universe around us. For those of us who are more aware, life is about being mindful as to how and why events and experiences come our way, what we are to learn from them, and how they impact our growth at all levels. So, at a fundamental level, life is awareness, in inverted commas, awareness, amongst many other things. Yet, most people go on with life without being consciously aware of this all-encompassing awareness that defines and impacts us in endless ways. This awareness dwells with us in our past, in our present, and in our future. However, its true and most powerful manifestation resides in the present. So, my dear friends, today's insight is not about providing answers. It is about opening doorways to perspectives that may bring clarity, meaning, and a deeper sense of presence to this mysterious journey we are all walking. So let us explore life from multiple levels, starting with the physical level, which is the one we are most familiar with. At a physical level, in very simple terms, life is a biological experience comprising our breath, our body, our senses, and all our mechanisms of survival in this material world. Physically speaking, life at its most basic level begins with breath. A silent inhale, a soft exhale. Now, I'd like to share with you an interesting story on the quiet power of breath as it engages with life. A young woman, let us call her Daisy, was recovering from a major car accident, and she found herself unable to walk, speak clearly, or do most basic daily tasks. The doctors focused on physical rehabilitation as her key route to healing. After recovery, many months later, her work colleagues threw her a party welcoming her back to work. And at the party, one of her colleagues asked her what she thought was the turning point in her painstaking rehabilitation. Her response was interesting. She smiled and said, "The turning point for me wasn't the day that I stood up. Sure, I was excited to be able to do that once again, and I was ever so grateful. However, my true turning point came well before that. It was when I became aware of my breath. Each inhale, Daisy said, I felt like life saying to me, I'm still here. Keep going. She said that single awareness grounded her, calmed her, and gave her the strength to begin again. And so, not begin again just physically, but as a whole being. She said her body, with its breath, became her doorway back to life. What a powerful and amazing insight she shared. The power of breath and its connection with the spirit of life. In fact, in many ancient schools of thought, they suggest that one's life is not measured by the number of years, days, and hours one lives on this earth, but rather by the number of breaths that one takes. They suggest that each being is ordained with a fixed number of breaths in this world between birth and death. And I, for one, believe that. To take this correlation further, even several scriptures say that when the Creator created the human being in the form of clay, using clay, He breathed life into this creation. He breathed life. Interesting choice of words, breathed life. Very profound. So my dear friends, we all need to be keenly conscious about our breath and how it resonates with life. This brings us to the next part of life, which is the body. Now, the body, with all its intricate systems, is a highly complex creation. It is the vessel through which we can experience the world and its myriads of lessons. Therefore, it is critical that we nurture the body, not just maintain it, nurture it. And hence we have to prioritize its health through exercise, correct nutrition, ample rest, and conscious gratitude for the role it plays in sustaining our quality of life. Now imagine, we all go to the bathroom daily and don't even think about how well our organs have had to perform to enable us to release our toxic solid and liquid wastes. We simply take it for granted as routine, but it is a lot more than that. For example, if any of us suffers from severe constipation, say for a week, I'm sure he or she would be begging to be relieved from the awful experience. A simple example like this makes us acknowledge and be grateful for the amazing work our organs have done for us all our lives and continue to do for us. We are totally dependent on them. And we must remember that medicines are not always the answer. There is no instant fix when it comes to the body. The body needs loving care and nurturing, just like we all do. Next, we come to the senses. Now, the senses open the gates to light, color, sound, texture, and taste. We touch, we see, we move. And through the body, life becomes tangible. Life becomes tangible through the body. Yet so often we are disconnected from this experience. We push the body beyond its limits, or ignore its signals, or worse still, abuse it through our lifestyle choices, causing damage that severely impacts our quality of life down the road. Conversely, when we consciously acknowledge our body and treat it with care and gratitude, it becomes more than just a vehicle. It becomes a partner in our awakening. The body is the ground of life. When we honor it, we create space for the deeper parts of life to reveal themselves. Remember, physical well-being is the foundation for deeper experiences. And this brings us next to the mental and emotional dimension of life, where we engage with life through perception and response. My dear friends, beyond the body lies the mind, the inner narrator that interprets everything we experience. Our thoughts shape what we know as reality, even though strictly speaking they are perceptions, not reality. Our beliefs shape our choices, and our emotions color the way we see the world. The same event can be lived in 1,000 different ways depending on the lens of the mind. A challenge can be seen as a punishment or as an opportunity. This is the power of mental awareness. When we observe our thoughts, rather than become entangled in them, we begin to see more clearly. The Bhagavad Gita talks at length about the concepts of action and inaction as two important and essential features of life that function at all levels of our existence, action and inaction. The Gita says, surely none can remain inactive even for a moment. Everyone is driven helplessly to action by nature-born qualities. Breath, as we just discussed, is one of those nature-born qualities. It is constant, continuous, and that's that type of action that it is, constant and continuous. The response to our thoughts is also action. And that's how life works, perception and response. Now, in the context of mental awareness, for example, inaction would include playing the role of observer of our thoughts. And action would be the physical act we perform in response to these thoughts. They go hand in hand. However, in both cases, being entangled in our thoughts is unwise, because all it leads to is lack of clarity and confusion, resulting in poor quality actions whose outcomes are often regrettable, and we all know this one. So the key advice here is observe your thoughts, don't be entangled in them. Another piece of key advice is approach life through the correct lens. Now, what does the correct lens mean? Let us look at an example of two friends, Amyn and Joseph, who are working for the same international tire manufacturer. Both of them get laid off the same day as the company is in financial turmoil. Amyn takes this very hard because he has dedicated many years of his life to the company and has gone out of his way for the company to sort out problems in their plants abroad. And he would often be sent away from his family for weeks and months at a time. Like Amyn, Joseph also played a similar dedicated role, where he too served the company with absolute devotion at a personal cost too. So here they are, both, shocked and devastated that they have been dropped like hot potatoes without any advance notice. Now what happens next? Amyn spirals into despair, very angry at his employer and convinced that life is against him. And he sinks deeper and deeper with time, because all his lens continues to show him is that life is against him. His family life also disintegrates as a result, and his wife divorces him and leaves with the children. Joseph, on the other hand, gets over the initial shock of being laid off, and then begins to perceive the layoff as life giving him a sign. He switches his course and starts a design studio, which is something he'd always wanted to do and always dreamed of doing, but never had the courage to because he had a family to feed. But now His lens shows him that this is his moment. This is his time to do what he had always dreamt of. With time, Joseph becomes very successful and actually even restores his family life by being available and spending more time with them. Years later, Amyn and Joseph meet up for a drink and talk about how life has treated them. The contrast between the two men's journeys is stark. One is still angry and despondent, and the other happy and fulfilled. Same event, two minds, two realities. It wasn't the job loss that shaped their paths. It was the lens through which they experienced it. So the core message here is, be aware that life has a lens, and how you use it and how you act on your thoughts and emotions determines the nature and quality of your experiences. So, my dear friends, as we explore life, let us remember the golden word, lens. Let us be mindful of our lens, observe our thoughts, and act on them in the best way we can through clarity. Our lens is clear when we observe, and it is obscure when we get entangled in our thoughts and emotions. Now, another factor to recognize in parallel with mental awareness is that life flows through our emotional landscape, which includes our joys, sorrows, fears, and hopes. These, my dear friends, are not weaknesses, they are signposts. They reveal where we are going, where we are healing, and where we are growing, and where we are still searching. So collectively, our mental awareness and emotional landscape make up what we call our inner world. Our inner world. We can experience life in a full, meaningful, and aligned manner by being mindful and tending to this inner world with clarity, wisdom, and compassion. And this brings us to the final dimension of life, which is the spiritual dimension. Now, I would like to begin by sharing a short story that opens the door to this dimension. It is about a woman called Anne, who sadly lost her husband at a young age. Very tragic circumstance. So Anne sat each morning in the garden, feeling lost and overwhelmed by grief. She couldn't believe that the man she deeply loved was gone, leaving her all alone. Then one dawn, as light broke over the trees, she felt a sudden sense of peace. Not from outside, but from deep within. I am still here, a voice whispered to her. I am still here. It wasn't a voice that she could explain. She said it felt like love itself had spoken to her. And from that day on, her sorrow softened. Not because it disappeared, but because something deeper had awakened. That quiet moment became her doorway to the spiritual dimension, a space where her healing began. So, my dear friends, in very simple language, the spiritual dimension is the part of us that longs for meaning, the part that feels awe beneath the stars, that seeks love, not just from others, but as a way of being. It is the silent presence we feel in moments of beauty or stillness. It is the quiet voice that whispers, there is more to life than this. The spiritual dimension is not necessarily tied to religion. It is the innate intelligence of the soul that reminds us we are more than our name, our job, or our past. It is what gives context to our suffering and what gives depth to our joy. It is where healing begins and peace takes root. So let us explore this profound dimension further in 6 very short parts. Part 1. The spiritual dimension is the most subtle yet profound dimension of life. The spiritual dimension is infinite. Now, how can we best visualize this infinity? Let us take the analogy of water. The physical dimension of life is like the droplet. We can all see it, fixed and finite. The mental and emotional dimensions are like a small pond of water in the garden. Much larger than the droplet, but less easy to quantify compared to the droplet. And the spiritual dimension is the ocean, vast, immeasurable, and infinite. And the fascinating part is, life is present with each one of us, and it comprises all these incredible dimensions, from the finite droplet to the vast ocean, infinite ocean. So that's one point. Part 2, let us look at intelligence. If our physical being, i.e. the single droplet, is intelligent, then the pond, which is our mental and emotional faculties, is of considerably greater intelligence compared to the droplet. And this is clearly obvious to us all. Going a step higher, the ocean would then be infinitely intelligent. So our spiritual dimension is of infinite intelligence. And this is why it is often referred to as our highest level of intelligence. Which brings us to part 3. And it is about, let us take a moment to think about education and how we give it such high priority and investment in our material world. Rightly so. Where is this education most focused? Largely on the development of the mind and acquiring skills, through which we can gain wealth and sustain ourselves. And this raises the question, how much investment are we making in cultivating the highest level of intelligence in our being? Minimal, compared to our focus on mental intelligence. Of course, we do have a side of education that deals with the development of the intellect, an important side. And this side fosters deep thinking, contemplation, meditation, and search for higher knowledge. But how much of our educational curriculum today emphasizes this aspect of our development? By far, I would say, not enough. I mean, the concept of higher development is not new. It has come to us repeatedly through the scriptures and teachings of higher spiritual thought. But sadly, a lot of it has been washed away by interventions of human greed, power, and control. Look at what has historically been done to our religions and esoteric practices that were originally intended to be unifying forces that would enhance our growth and the quality of our experiences in this world. So we as a humanity have lost so much of this treasure, but it's not too late. We can revisit this whole concept and glean out the pure essence of the invaluable teachings that we have been graced with, which can truly complete our education in this world in a wholesome manner. This brings us to part 4. Let us consider wealth. When I look at human beings from a distance, I see each person working hard day in and day out in pursuit of wealth and sustenance. So then I ask myself, where does this wealth sit with us today? I see people with money in their pockets, that's one place, and a lot more in their bank accounts, and even more in their businesses and investments and savings. And then, full stop, dead end, nothing after that. What about the largest vault of immeasurable gold? Why is no one looking at that? It saddens me to see how we as a humanity have failed to realize our true and timeless wealth, which comes from the Spirit. where the very notion of poverty is non-existent. So the message here is, let us add development and enrichment of our spirit and intellect to our life's curriculum. Through, for example, deep thinking, contemplation, meditation, and search for higher knowledge and more. After all, that's where our permanent and eternal wealth lies, something that life so generously offers to all of us. Let us harness this opportunity with love, passion, and vigor, for it will open us up to the richness of inspiration, enlightened thought, and knowledge. So then, part 5. The spiritual dimension of life is one of higher awareness. Mental awareness is like the awareness of the pond of water in the garden. Spiritual awareness is like the vast ocean. And life has given us all the special tools to access this higher awareness. These tools are subtle, but can help refine our lives in unimaginable ways. For example, our softer senses, which include intuition, higher instincts, premonition, and the old gentle but ever potent inner voice. These are our softer senses. We are all familiar with the use of our normal 5 senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. While we simply park away our amazing softer senses in a category called the 6th sense, which we believe only the lucky few can access. Well, my dear friends, I have news for you. Each one of us, we are all amongst the lucky few. We all have the immeasurable capacities of our softer senses. Let us start using them a lot more than we have been so far, starting with conscious awareness and mindfulness of their presence and their messages. And part 6, which is the final part, is looking deeper at the spiritual dimension. It is the most powerful unifying force of all creation. It is our greatest dimension, where our soul and spirit and its creator are in unison and oneness, revealing to us that each one of us is life itself. We are all life itself. I am life itself, so are you. Like the scriptures say, we created you from one soul. Therefore, the spiritual dimension interconnects all life in the universe, irrespective of form. Imagine the marvel of 8 billion beings in this world, endowed with the same life force, and everything that it brings at a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. All 8 billion people living and experiencing the same earth, completely interconnected at their material and spiritual levels. Isn't that just incredible? How such a creation of oneness can exist in 8 billion different bodies, minds, and emotional landscapes? Fascinating. Doesn't it evoke all kinds of feelings and beg deeper questions, such as how we all share life together on this planet, how we treat one another, how the core dimensions of our spirit, such as love, peace, unity, harmony, compassion, and gratitude, are ever present in each one of us, and yet completely lost in our material consciousness. And how, when we live connected with our true spirit, life becomes not just a series of events, but a sacred unfolding. An unknown poet once said, "Life is not just time between birth and death. It is the sacred space between breath and awareness. It is the quiet moment when the heart remembers who we truly are. It is the journey of returning to ourselves fully, kindly, and consciously. Let us walk this life not in haste, but in wonder, not in fear, but in faith, and may we live not merely to exist, but to awaken. And in conclusion, I would say that exploring and introspecting life raises an inspiring question. What would our inner world look like if all the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual dimensions of life come together? That, my dear friends, is enlightenment. This is the short insight that I wish to share with you today, and I hope that it has offered you much to think about.